Hello everyone and welcome to Optimise or Overhaul. Should I optimise my website or is it time to replatform? So before we get started, just a few housekeeping points to mention. So we will be having a Q&A session at the end with our panellists. So please do feel free to send over your questions using the chat function. We'll also be launching a few polls throughout the webinar, so do keep your eyes peeled for those as well. And this session will be recorded. So while I hope you'll stay with us for the whole session, if you do miss anything, you will receive a copy of the recording to your email inbox. So to set the scene a little, I guess 2025 is nearly upon us, and I find there's something quite refreshing about a new calendar year to reset priorities and goals. And one of the common questions we often get is, I only have so much budget to invest in improving my website. Should I stick with my current site and my current experience and make iterative optimizations, or is my budget best invested in a more radical website overhaul project that might, say, include anything from a website redesign to a rebuild, or maybe even a replatform to a completely new CMS? So before I introduce today's guest to jump into the conversation, we're going to launch our first poll. So we're asking you, are you looking to optimize or overhaul your website in 2025? So hopefully that should be coming on the screens now, and I'll give you a moment to answer that. I'll just give people a few more seconds to answer. Okay, let's share the results then. Can we bring that on screen? Okay, so a bit of a split then between some people thinking, yeah, I'm definitely going to optimize, others don't know. Okay, well, hopefully we might make the answer a little bit clearer as we progress through the conversation today. So really pleased that joining our conversation today, we have Ashley Hislop, who's currently digital marketing lead at Baringa, a globally leading management consultancy. And so glad that Ashley's joining us. He's got such a wealth of experience in digital, especially within professional services, and having formerly been a digital consultant at PwC for a number of years. And in recent years, Baringa have undergone, both a large replatforming project and are now on an optimization journey. So I think Ashley's perfectly positioned to, share his opinions and both sides of the coin. Also joining us, we have Adam Davey, Director of Technology, and Jonathan Kelly, Director of Experience at Candyspace, who are the tech and design brains behind many of the amazing web, app, and e-commerce experiences for leading brands such as ITV, Nestle, Global, and Rolls-Royce. So hi guys, welcome to the conversation. So I guess to kind of start us off, I wanted to explore what are the sort of underlying reasons for change. So my first question to you is, what are some of the common digital pain points businesses may be experiencing that indicate change is needed? And Ashley, I'll come to you first on this one.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think there are a whole range of things. In my experience, I think it's a big, if you want to replatform, it's a big undertaking. And I think there needs to be a big reason to change. And so you'll see that in the website not performing in the way that you want. It might be that your strategy's changed, right, and your current site doesn't sort of align with your overall goals. It might be your marketing goals, your brand goals. It might be that you've become more focused around account-based marketing, and your website doesn't have the personalization functionality. It might be that your technology sort of that you're on is sort of outdated, and it doesn't really work in your wider marketing stack, and certainly integrate with your other business applications. So you'll find that these pain points become apparent as you go about doing what you do. And maybe there's a realization sort of already, or maybe you come to a realization over time that these pain points are kind of becoming something that you can't live with and that you need to address them.
Absolutely. Jonathan, what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I guess just to add to that, the type of things that we usually hear when businesses are coming to us, as Ashley said, there's some kind of catalyst. There's a pain point. There's some kind of like a real desire to change something. But what we usually find, which is interesting, is that often more of a business-led pain point, as sort of Ashley was just talking about there. Maybe it's around the content management experience. It's difficult to update. It's time-consuming to update. Is something that we hear often, which is something really that is something that can only ever really be solved by changing your CMS, or that, like by replatforming to something different. Sometimes we hear about, as Ashley said, different business initiatives. So whether that's a change in strategy, or there's some new feature that you need to launch, and maybe not, or maybe difficult to implement on your current stack. These things lead towards often maybe a replatform or something that might be the right way to go. Interestingly, on the flip side to that, often where we get people to come to us as well, which are more kind of user-led pain points. There's a problem with the user experience, potentially, maybe them not getting the kind of conversions that I would like to see, or maybe the website is difficult to navigate, and there are different, there's problems with my content. I think things like that often actually, interestingly, might actually be more easy to solve with something like an optimization of the current stack. So I guess it's not black and white, and there is nuance within this stuff. But I think often when we find people with these more fundamental business pain points, often tends to lead more towards a sort of a replatform or an overhaul. And often when people come with more kind of a UX pain point, or some kind of user pain point, then often that can lead towards more of a an optimization of the current stack. But again, these things aren't black and white, but that's commonly what we see.
And I find that if you you can separate those things out. My sort of feeling would be that if you've got pain points just in user experience, you could probably address that without replatforming your whole website. But if you're finding that your authoring experience is poor, right, or that you're on technology that really just doesn't have the platform, the digital experience platform just isn't in the in the magic quadrant, for instance, or whatever, that you see yourselves going as a business, you need the support from a technology partner that you don't have. Clearly that's the time to think about replatforming. There might be many other pain points, like like Jonathan mentioned, like UX, UI, you're just not getting the conversion rates. Maybe they're dropping off, or maybe you never had them. But then, some of the things that I found when I joined Baringa was that the website had just sort of been built really well, but hadn't really been touched for about 4 years. It was built and then left, and then you didn't get that sort of ongoing evolution. And I think that's probably a common scenario with lots of businesses, where that sometimes you think of this project as a bit of an investment, you replatform your website, you redesign it, you rethink it, and then it's a bit of a one and done. You think, right, that's done, we can kind of move on and start thinking about whatever it might be. You might be doing a CRM project, or some sort of other part of your MarTech stack becomes the focus. And you kind of let the website just sort of stagnate, and therefore everything moves on. The Google algorithms move on, and you find that you're not meeting core web vitals anymore, and that your mobile experience isn't great, and that you're starting to suffer because the ranking signals have all changed. And so that's where you've got a number of these pain points kicking in. Some of them you can just potentially put a sticking plaster over, but actually if you've got some of those more significant ones, it's time to replatform.
That's really interesting. Already starting to maybe understand there might be a bit of distinction between those kind of user-led customer pain points versus operational business inefficiencies, essentially.
Yeah, I can jump in here as well, because I think a key, you both have sort of touched on it, but I think one of the key areas really is if your ability to innovate is being impeded or hampered in any way, that's a real indicator as to whether you need to replatform. All the things around site speed, page load speeds, bounce rates, all of that, abandonment, all of those things are solid metrics that can lead you to making a decision one way or other. But really, are you able to iterate? Ashley, you talked about kind of being able to evolve a website over time. Like, are you actually able to do that, or are you being impeded? That's really key, because you get to a point with old, outdated platforms, it's harder to integrate with other systems. It's security vulnerabilities, scaling during peak traffic periods. All of those things are really key. Those are the sort of technical items that we often see. But for me, I think, on digital products, we need to be constantly evolving. And if you aren't able to evolve at speed, that is often a key indicator for us that replatforming is something to consider.
I guess that's
sure.
interesting.
You go, Rosie.
I was it just linked to that, Adam. It's interesting in itself. If you haven't got the right foundations to innovate and the right kind of tech to kind of back that, that is ultimately going to impact on your customer experience at the end of the day as well. So even though we are maybe looking at this from an operational business sort of led sort of decision, actually it is still linked. The tech is still linked to customer experience ultimately.
Yeah, and I always say this, but if you're spending your time updating, feeding, watering your infrastructure and patching and all that kind of not so sexy stuff, you want to be innovating and delivering the next generation of customer experience. And so leveraging up-to-date SaaS platforms kind of gives you that freedom, but we see lots of clients who are hampered and bogged down by all of that. So I think that's ultimately key.
I mean, I think from perspective of someone, if you're a practitioner, you on the client side, you may change organizations from time to time. It's likely that many people who are running sites have inherited those sites and inherited the decisions that have been made by teams, or individuals prior to them. I think it's really important if you're a practitioner to, really get behind the reasons and the use case and the scenarios and the personas that you originally created your website around. Really understand what they are and what they're for, and really understand whether they still fit for purpose. Are they gonna because a lot of the time you'll architect your entire web presence on things that are relevant at the time, but then your goals, as I mentioned earlier, would move on, related to sort of like account-based marketing, for instance. And so having the opportunity, like I did at Baringa, to come in and then start with a blank sheet of paper, engage the business, engage all the stakeholders internally, get them involved in the process to actually really sort of put down on paper, well, what it is that we're trying to do with our website, who are our audiences. And obviously for a B2B company like ourselves, we've got, obviously clients and prospects are our primary audience, but we've also got, press, and we've also got a big audience for, potential new hires, employees who are researching us to see if that they would like to join our organization. And these are really, really important audiences. And there's also staff, actually. There's an audience that's often forgotten about, which is your own staff. And sometimes the way that you explain your products and services on your website is actually one of the ways that your staff do understand what it is that you're offering your clients. And so that's not to be missed. And so having the opportunity to sort of go through a process, and we did this at Baringa through a business impact matrix, and creating that sort of like very specific set of goals that go all the way from your strategy all the way down through to specific KPIs and measurables, and then build your website and use that as your core set of principles, all bought into by your key stakeholder group and your steerco. That's a really good opportunity to just get it right. But then, as I say, if you don't revisit that for 2 years, then you might find it's outdated, and you need to hopefully tweak what you're doing and modify rather than re-platform again.
Yeah, good point. Is your experience meeting the needs of your customers now? And are you able to anticipate their future needs as those evolve, which naturally, they will do? I guess, Jonathan, any sort of closing remarks from yourself on this one?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think interesting on the flip side, we do sometimes have, conversations with people that have really got it in their mind that they really want to re-platform. But after sort of further interrogation, actually we find that there's not necessarily sufficient reason to. And actually there's, often you can, by having, as Ashley mentioned as well, by having the right research informing the decisions, and by really making sure that you quantify that pain point and understand the benefit or the impact of if you do change it, and make sure that is really, really well informed, you can have the most confidence going ahead. But like you said, sometimes re-platforming is not necessarily needed, and you can do a good job through optimization. So I think it's really making sure that you've got the right research informing it, you've got the right data backing it up in terms of quantifying what those pain points are, and being able to build upon that. I think as well, just as closing this off, understanding the benchmark of the existing platform is also super important with whichever route you take, to be able to measure the effectiveness of whatever kind of whatever option you go with, and making sure that you can demonstrate and like articulate like the ROI or the improvement that's made from whichever route you take, whether that is optimization or a replatform overhaul.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move to our next question then. So I guess I'm interested to know, are there any common scenarios where optimizing your current site would potentially be the best approach?
I'm happy to go here first again. I mean, from my perspective, I think budget's often a key factor. Replatforming is often going to be much more expensive, and I think if budget is a factor, or potentially maybe there's not real consensus across stakeholders of exactly which is the right way to go. Often we find with optimization, being able to start smaller, being able to build a bit of momentum and stakeholder buy-in and grow from there can often be a good route to take. And for example, you could see results much more quickly, even from 3 to 4 weeks to launch your first experiment, to start actually demonstrating ROI, start improving the user experience, and being able to demonstrate that ROI to stakeholders. From our experience, optimization is often can be sort of a lower cost option with a faster route to market. And actually what we found as well is that doing some optimization up front can help to better quantify that pain point and get to a point where you realize, okay, we've embarked on some optimization. We actually feel here that maybe we've hit a bit of a wall without actually some more significant investment and some actual real change in terms of like platform features and functionality. We feel that we're maybe not going to take it to that next step. So often as a little bit of a way of testing the water and really understanding where that investment is best spent, then optimization can be a good place to start.
I'd echo all of that. I'd also say that it's just from an internal sort of, I guess, politics in a way. Everybody's got a view on the way they think something should be designed, something should look, something should come across to their customers there, and so you've got all of these voices in an organization that have all got valid points, but they're all often very subjective kind of views on what design should do or what. So obviously bringing the data that you get from conversion rate optimization or experimentation, A/B testing, multivariate testing, that takes a lot of that subjectivity out, right? You can develop, okay, you'd have to spend the money to develop the different variations, but you can just prove what's working. And if you then store the results of all of those different experiments, quite often you'll get the same things come up, and you, rather than redo the test, you can use the data from a previous experiment to make your point and kind of head off a particular design direction that's required by a particular stakeholder. And it's not to sort of squash people's ideas or enthusiasm. Quite the opposite. It can actually give you you can be surprised, no matter how long you've been working in sort of digital experience or UX or UI design, you might find that the kind of test that you put in as a sort of someone else thought of something, and you might find that that's the one that wins, and so it really is not, there's no substitute for that data, for actually getting that data and using that data to help inform those otherwise difficult conversations.
Yeah, I'd echo that. But as a rule of thumb, I guess what we've seen is optimization is probably effective or appropriate when your core platform's in a good place. Your core platform's performing, all of those kind of fundamental foundational things that you require from the platform are in place and operating as expected. It's just, you have some measurable goals or metrics you want to drive, but the platform itself is healthy. The other things you can think about really are like, are you getting good traffic but your conversion rates are lower than expected? That's another one. That's a key indicator. And are other businesses on similar technology stacks outperforming you? That could be one as well. Like that to me would be a warning sign. You need to replatform in that scenario? Probably not. And the other thing, I think you touched on it, Ashley, but like the kind of mind shift, the kind of cultural mind shift within an organization to move to that experimentation culture is a big one. And, that's when we found experimentation to be the most effective. So moving towards that place takes time, but we've seen businesses do it. But you've got to have the capability to implement that A/B testing, gather meaningful data, and move forward with confidence. So I guess we aren't in that business of just recommending replatforming for fun. Like, there needs to be science behind it. But really, if you've got a good, solid, well-performing platform at its core, you'd seek to undertake a program of optimization. That's typically where we look to.
Agree, yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, I think what can sometimes be a misconception as well around optimization is that obviously that we'll try to, with businesses that we work with, have a variety of kind of more simple tests and more complex. And as Ashley said, actually, it's surprising. Sometimes the most simple thing can be the most effective. You can get a big win from something that's really, really straightforward. But actually, what we do see is that the more complex tests, where we actually fundamentally change the UX, they often do have bigger impacts and bigger wins. And I think that, I guess, I just want to sort of squash the misconception that maybe if you optimize, you can't make big changes, because actually you can. And with all the tools now, with being able to do front end JavaScript overrides and actually inject new components that didn't exist before, or actually fundamentally change UX through new journeys and new components that are injected by those A/B testing tools, you can actually make some quite fundamental changes. So I guess if there are some more fundamental things that need to change from a front end perspective, you can often test those out through experimentation, and then once you have the confidence that thing's actually going to work, then you can then invest in all the back end stuff to actually implement that in your existing platform. So I guess often when people think about experimentation, they think about copy change or moving elements around and adding CTAs, which are all really, really valid things and definitely things that you should always be doing as like a regular drumbeat. But actually often where we find is actually fundamentally changing the UX by designing and building a new component or something to inject in there is often where we can see the biggest the biggest wins and the biggest impact.
I mean, that's why we align ourselves with products like Optimisely. Optimisely being a market leader consistently again and again, allows us to do the things that John said, which is the kind of JavaScript overrides with the web experimentation product, but then doing much more fundamental feature-based experimentation, which is actually very sophisticated and will drive bigger and better results for you. I mean, it just depends on the remit, aim and scope of your experimentation program, but a product like Opti can really provide you that full suite, whether it's from small, quite distinct experimentation programs all the way through to fully fledged feature-based. That's why we align ourselves with these technologies.
Great. I love that concept of making sort of step change in experience even with optimization, and then what can we learn from that? What can we sort of save in terms of like time and like effort with resource, and making sure that we're not implementing things that aren't going to deliver those results that we want. And as you were saying, Jonathan, having utmost confidence over that. So I guess what I'm hearing is sort of a lot of user-led, user experience challenges as where maybe optimization is quite a good candidate to address some of those. Probably a good time for us to take a break for our next poll. So our next question is, what experience challenges are you experiencing with your current website? So we'll launch that. If you don't see an option that's relevant to you, please feel free to post in the chat or send in a PM over to us. And again, I'll just wait. People are being a little bit shy today. We'll give them a moment to vote. Maybe 10 more seconds. See if we get a few more. Okay, let's share. I think people are being a little bit shy with their responses today, which is absolutely fine. I'm sure you're not the only one. So interesting. A few sort of splits here across poor user experience, low conversion rate, high bounce and abandonment rate. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. And I guess probably editor experience aside, which is perhaps more of an operational issue, I guess optimization can be a really good candidate to address many of those pain points. So thinking about now, what are the benefits that you guys feel are for conducting an optimization or experimentation program? And perhaps you'd be able to talk through any examples of either how this has worked at your organization or perhaps some of the businesses that you work with. Ashley, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess, we touched on some of these already, just in terms of, removing subjectivity and just being able to test and learn before investing in development work. They're some of the main things for me that I'm seeing, in my role. Examples are, for instance, changing calls to action, right? You change a call to action. Actually, I can reference something at a previous company where, we actually built out so part of what we did was a lot of long format storytelling, right? And so there was sort of in-depth reports, and we would find that the conversion rate for contacting us, we were looking at the scroll maps, and we were seeing that no one's getting down to the part of the page where we feature the experts at the bottom, or where we got our contact calls to action. So we built, as many people did, a sticky call to action that follows you down the page. And in this case, it was one which sort of actually comes out of the bottom of the screen, and you can actually have an embedded form within that if you want to. And so, it increased the contact conversions by about 500%. Right, so it was incredibly successful. Similarly, you could apply that to subscribe, call to action, or maybe a gated report as well. So there's and being able to sort of like just show that change overnight, along with the scroll maps and the other pieces of evidence that sort of imply that look, you're putting these things way down, and if you want to push that through the actual the content, layer that into the page, the calls to action, it can sort of interrupt the reading experience for people who don't want that call to action. So just by building out that one piece and overlaying it over just one publication, in order to show the results, it then got rolled out as a standard feature on this Big Four website, which use it still, and use it quite heavily, and I'm sure still get a lot of value out of it. So that's just an example of where just a test and learn approach can lead to sort of major change across results and UI, UX design for every subsequent design.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, often it is an easier way to demonstrate kind of ROI to stakeholders. You can kind of minimize, I guess, like the risk and the cost of whether you're going to make an investment. Again, a good example of where optimization, experimentation really worked well with us, with a client that we were working with. We were working on a platform which is like a European-wide platform. So there is kind of a European-wide roadmap of the whole platform. So each of the European territories share this platform, and then there are individual markets that have their own marketing teams that are working on their own kind of like part of the website within their market in localized campaigns and stuff. So within what we found within this platform is that there was a problem with the navigation, some elements being hidden in the subnav, and we could see from the data that people on mobile specifically were not being able to get to this specific page because it was being hidden in the subnav in the way that the nav kind of works responsively to this nav item was exposed on desktop. It wasn't a problem for desktop, it was just for mobile when it was kind of collapsed into a subnav expanding menu. So we had highlighted this through data. We had gone to our kind of like, in part of the UK marketing team saying that this is the issue. Can we escalate this to the European team? Can we get this on the roadmap? Obviously, as you can appreciate, the European team had a really big roadmap. They've got lots of stuff to do, and it was just not on their radar. It was something that was never going to get to. But we could see that our users were struggling, and we were assuming that this was going to be a European-wide platform. We were actually able to launch an experiment on our own UK platform, which was just to quantify if we were to make a change to the navigation, or by injecting some CTAs into the page, could we kind of like improve that journey and have that benefit. So we launched that experiment really quickly. We saw the value. We saw how many users were getting through to that page and the value that had in the overall conversion. And actually, that was able to quickly build a business case, which was escalated to the European team and was able to make that change. And I guess if we didn't have experimentation, we would just never have been able to make it, because as you can appreciate, probably common in lots of businesses, when there's a large roadmap, there's lots of big ticket items to be done. Often individual markets don't sort of get a seat at the table, or maybe they've not got those things to be escalated. So we found in those kind of cases it's really interesting to be able to experiment, to be able to see the ROI, to be able to understand what the value of that change was, build a business case, and then that's been escalated and being able to add it to that wider roadmap. So in those kind of instances where obviously budget's an issue, or it's just not, you're not able to get traction within like a large business, then experimentation can be a really great way of being able to build up that business case and have like real data, real ROI to be able to demonstrate to those stakeholders.
I love that. It's a great way to sort of maximize, I guess, your investment and, help with prioritization as well. And like you said, being seen, particularly for, I can imagine globally operating companies that you've got lots of different teams, vying for attention and budget. And yeah, how do you kind of build that case? That's great. I guess, Adam, I'm actually going to jump to you for the next one, just in the interest of time, because we are going to be moving to looking at things from more of a technical and sort of infrastructure perspective. So before I move straight to you on our next question, we're going to have another poll. So we're asking kind of the flip side of the question we asked a moment ago, which is, what technology challenges are you experiencing with your current website? So again, there'll be a list of completely not exhaustive, pain points that you might be experiencing. I'll give you a moment to answer some of those. And again, please feel free to send over any others that you might be having. Just give that a few more seconds. Okay, let's share the results here. So interestingly, okay, so legacy, outdated technologies, lack of integrations, technical debt. Again, I'm sure these are probably common signs that you see, Adam, and sort of at least got nicely to sort of my next question around, like, what are those key signs that show that a business is ready to replatform or perhaps take more of a transformative approach to improving their digital estate?
Yeah, I mean, based on our experience on replatforms, there are a whole number of different indicators. It goes back to the thing I said at the beginning, which is your current stack preventing you from entering new markets, launching new products, or just generally your ability to innovate at speed and at scale? So like, are you being limited in terms of your business agility, your ability to move fast, adapt, evolve? Can your product support like modern customer experiences that we've all come to become used to? Are you having trouble delivering real high quality immersive customer experiences with the platform you've got? Things like security and compliance, a lot of people don't think about that stuff, but that's stuff I often get involved with, and often people are driven away from their current stacks because of those things. All those risks that are out in the wild. Partnering with a great product or platform like Opti or whatever that might be, all of those things are taken care of. What we see is the poll is actually quite indicative of the kind of thing we see. Really big one is having a technology stack that is hampering you. You're having to do workarounds, you're having to work on refactoring lots of code, ultimately technical debt. That is something that bogs people down. So, and that increases the cost of ownership, because you're having to plow money into that. So, we often conduct audits at the beginning of taking on a digital product, just so that we can have a really, really clear idea about where that technical debt resides. And there are often, strategies to overcome that, but it really depends. And I would say it's never just, I would say there's often more than one pieces of, in the puzzle here, in terms of the different factors that indicate a business is ready to replatform. But I would say being bogged down in that kind of the mire of managing technical debts and managing all of that kind of legacy code or infrastructure problems, those are, I would say, probably that's the number one key indicator, because that's the thing that's going to hamper your ability to innovate at speed.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, we've seen like with businesses we worked with previously, where there's legacy platforms that have kind of been stitched together or bolted together. Often there's there might be fragmentation across the experience, where there's disparate platforms that kind of have just legacy functionality attached to them, and they're kind of bolted together. And often this kind of replatform can help to unify those things and to have a consistent front end user experience. I mean, often as Adam said, like, we found that significant technical debt can sometimes mean that optimization is just not possible. Like, depending on the way things are structured or the way that these platforms are kind of stitched together, then often it's just really, really tricky to optimize. And I guess another thing that we found as well with the talking about platform fragmentation specifically, sometimes it's really actually difficult to get a single customer view of kind of how your platform is performing if you do have sort of a fragmented customer journey or legacy technical implementation that doesn't have the right tracking set up. So often what we can find is that actually people, they know they have this gut feeling that there's a problem, but it's really difficult to kind of isolate and articulate the kind of the reason for it, because actually it's quite difficult to track things in the way that sort of platforms are set up.
Yeah, and my thinking on that is all of that's completely true. And just from a sort of my personal experience, when we looked at the Baringa site, and we started to think about the platform that we wanted to acquire and use, there was a big conversation about, should we go headless? Should we have a Jamstack type of approach where you can bring lots of individual products together, integrate them, and therefore be much more agile when it comes to constantly upgrading? You can swap out a better search tool, when you realize that you need a better search tool, or you can sort of like bring your authoring experience up using a different tool, or there could be a whole number of reasons for doing that. I mean, on the other side of the kind of argument was having one digital experience provider that you trust to bring and maintain all of the different tooling to a good enough degree, that you can bring together your content recommendations or your experimentation and your content marketing or content management platform. And if you think about where you are as a business and what works for you, for us it was, let's go with a single DXP, one-stop shop, but that's because we just didn't have the resources to do the integrations and to continually sort of update, and manage lots of different supplier tools. And so it really depends on where you are as a business. But I think that thinking about all of that up front when you're thinking about replatforming is really, really key. And clearly, if you're a business like us, you don't necessarily have all of that expertise in-house. Working with a really good partner like Candyspace can really help you there. Just incidentally, we worked with Candyspace after we replatformed our website, but we worked with some brilliant other agencies in the lead up to doing that as well. So yeah, just some sort of like, I guess, considerations from being on the ground, and having been through that relatively recently.
Right. No, that's really interesting to hear. And I guess, like, if we had to kind of summarize, what are those sort of benefits that we can benefit from overhauling your site, taking more of a transformative approach?
I mean, if I just keep going for a minute, so I think that I'll go back to something I said, I think in the first part of the call, which is just having that opportunity to do something fresh, do something clean slate. And okay, you've got that issue of you've got the HIPPO, right? The highest paid person's opinion. So that obviously is something that you've got to consider when you build something like a new website. You need to get everybody on board without going design by committee, and that's a real challenge. But if you can nail that through a proper governance model and getting everybody, understanding their roles and responsibilities within the project and setting that scope out, it's not easy. But if you can get there, then you can unlock a really sort of like worthwhile process of saying, how can we be fresh? How can we be distinctive? You're not bound by any of the old shackles and chains of your existing web presence. You can define something like really cut through. And if there's anything that we're all trying to do out there as client side, as brands, we're trying to get noticed, right? We're trying to make our clients have a great experience with us, both in person and and in the digital space. And so the website's a massive part of that. And it needs to do that, and do that really well, so that your stakeholders, the people who work with clients, are proud to refer clients to your website. That's like a really, really big part of it. But then you've got all of that stuff around making it work well in search, making it work across all of those different integrations that you've got. And it's a really, really complex undertaking, a replatforming, and I think that's just something that you need to approach with a very, very structured and clear in a structured and clear way.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, I think something that I guess is a byproduct of an overhaul or replatform often is as Ashley said, there's a much bigger undertaking. Often what we find is it will start with some kind of a discovery phase, where you'll really get into the detail of like why you're doing this, what are the business reasons, what's the value of change, and all of that type of stuff. But what we usually find is that having more significant stakeholder involvement, more significant research, you can kind of challenge things more, you can go a bit further, make more significant changes. So for example, you can really articulate the user needs, really understand your users more deeply, conduct some user research, really understand what they're looking for and how you can meet their needs. Similarly, from a business perspective, it's a really good opportunity to be able to interrogate what is the business vision, what's the messaging, what's our kind of our outward facing message to market. And actually these are things that these more fundamental changes can often get a bit more of a, let's just say, like a wider holistic kind of business alignment behind something, and you can change things at a more fundamental level, which is maybe not just about the website, it's about actually understanding what's your outward facing kind of vision and messaging to from a business, and how you can articulate and solve your user needs. So through that more in-depth research and kind of discovery, often you can articulate those things and have just more of a like a fundamental kind of foundation within which to build on and make more significant changes.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd add obviously a replatform is a massive undertaking, and a complete overhaul it's intensive, but it does deliver that quite a lot of transformative benefits for businesses. It makes your business future ready in terms of your digital infrastructure, so that's a big consideration. In terms of like other benefits, obviously improving your digital experience, improving your ability to innovate, improving your ability to integrate and respond to market changes, and all those things I've mentioned. But scalability, performance, security, compliance, all of those things are things that often just come out of the box with modern SaaS platforms that we typically see in the top quadrant of the Gartner quadrant. So yes, it's a big undertaking, but it can in turn deliver transformative benefits and results for businesses. We've seen that time and time again.
Great stuff. Okay, in this final section of the webinar, I'm really keen for us to kind of explore that concept of risk and how we balance cost against benefit. So before we go into detail on the next question, I'm going to do a quick round robin, and I'm going to ask all of our panelists to give me a one-word answer, I know it's quite difficult, to the next question before I'll come to you individually to expand upon that answer. So, and I know this is a difficult one, I know this is a difficult ask, but what do you think is a riskier approach? Running an experimentation program where anything could happen, both good or bad, or committing to a transformative project that might address certain problems but maybe disrupt others in the process? So experimentation riskier or transformation riskier? Who wants to go first? Who's going to bite the bullet?
I'll go. From my perspective anyway, again, let's be honest, there's nuance to this, but from my perspective, I would say more often than not, with what we see from our experience, replatform or transformation is more risky. That would be my answer.
I'd agree, John. Bigger initial investment, longer time to value, more complex changes that need to be incorporated, and potentially some business disruption in the mix. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts in a transformation piece. 100%. It's a transformation is the riskier option if not done correctly.
Ashley,
yeah,
what's your thought?
it's very. I mean, it's very difficult when you at the point of deciding that you need to transform the website to know exactly, or even roughly, like how long is it going to take, how much money is it going to cost. And I think it's fair to say that whatever you arrive at from your sort of logical calculations, you can double it, or at least sort of add on 50%. So in my experience, that is a risk that you promise and you plan for, a digital transformation, a website transformation that's going to take a year, but actually it takes 18 months. And actually that last 6 months is potentially where you hadn't planned to not have an updated website. And so, if you're hanging a lot of your other sort of goals on that, you're kind of out of pocket in a way. Now, I'd really sort of recommend just sort of being generous in the time and the estimates that you take. And I think the other thing is just don't let perfection, sort of get in the way of doing something good, right? I think that's another learning. You won't be able to launch something that's perfect, right? And you won't be able to get it all right first time. So just when you've got your list of user stories, your list of use cases, your personas, you need to go through a process and go like, which of these are absolutely critical to our business, right? And once you've got those, then you use those to develop your first cut, and that will then give you a much shorter timeline to getting something that does does the few things that you really need to do really well. It does it, you get that out the door, but you accept the fact that there's going to be some stakeholders who haven't got what they want, and you're going to have sticking plaster those until you can get the next iteration of your site, or patch it, or add the additional functionality. So I think the risk there is just underestimating the cost and the resource. I'd say sort of the other risk that I see from an internal perspective is just, I've mentioned this before, but lack of stakeholder involvement. It's really tempting. It's much easier to go ahead and sort of like plan this all, within a small team, and actually sort of like go da-da, but 9 times out of 10 what you come out with will be wrong. It won't really match. So I would suggest really getting the buy-in of some key people who understand the challenges, understand the medium, but people who will be able to sort of champion what you're doing and make sure that you've got the right voices heard, that it's a decision about what you've prioritized has been a decision that you come to through, a wider group of stakeholders than just, potentially just in marketing. So that's the other sort of risk, I would say. And then, a couple of the others that just come to mind are, if neglecting SEO. I mean, SEO is, so your website is there, and increasingly, it's zero click, right? And so where's all that zero click content coming from? It's coming from websites. And so you need to be getting found. You need to be having content that works through zero click search engine results pages, but also now generative AI tools as well. So do we need to start thinking about SEO as well as GEO, generative AI optimization? So they're things that are emerging, that are changing, and I know that there's a lot of sort of conversations in the SEO space about what can we be doing differently. But all of that comes back to your website, the markup, the structured markup that you can put there in order to help the content work, in order to use the Google Eat methodology, where it's all about expertise and citing the experts that you've got, and making sure that you can respond to sort of the latest sort of Google algorithms that are really sort of driving what gets consumed outside of your website. I think that's also really, really key. So you might launch a website and you might think it's the best site you've ever seen, right? But if no one's actually seeing that, we know that over 50% of traffic to websites comes from organic search. So that's your kind of bread and butter. You need to have that really sort of worked out early doors, right? So all the way from your information architecture to your content strategy to your technical SEO, and working with a dedicated SEO partner is probably the way to go in that space as well. I think they're the main risks that I see, Rosie.
Great. Interesting. So it sounds like we're all on a similar page with that one. I guess to play devil's advocate a bit here, as we've already covered, there are some issues that simply can't be fixed by not taking that more step change, transformative approach to your website. We've covered things like, if you're burdened with legacy technologies, technical debt. We've touched a little bit upon that kind of internal marketer experience. If you've got pages that are impossible to update without developer input, I mean, that is going to require an overhaul of some sort. And yeah, it might be riskier, but it might still be the right decision for your business and kind of where you're at. So, and I guess also, on the other flip side of that, you've got that whole risk of inactivity, of not doing anything. Your experience stagnates, that of your competitors evolves and improves. So I guess staying with that concept of risk thing, okay, thinking about like what can we do to mitigate risk. So firstly, addressing optimization. I guess how do I ensure that my optimization efforts are going to quickly demonstrate results and be worth the investment?
Sure, I can start with that, Rosie. So I think a really well structured approach, and I think it starts with having good hypotheses that are driven by data. So you're understanding, you've identified things that are driven by data in terms of insights around how the platform's performing, performance of specific areas, specific user feedback as well. If you're able to get that through usability testing or from user research, to really articulate what are the things that aren't working, and how can we build some hypothesis around how we can solve them. So I think that fundamental layer of insight is really key to informing optimization. To be fair, it's key in informing the overhaul as well, to make sure that you're doing things for the right reasons. But certainly to ensure you're going to get the most out of optimization, it's really having a good understanding of what's not working and having that informed by data and through research. I think as well, as the next step, it's around prioritization. So often with an optimization campaign, if you're just starting out on starting to optimize stuff, there can often, if your platform is underperforming, there can be lots of different things that you want to do. And often we find that there are competing stakeholders that might have owning specific areas of a platform that really want to get their part of the platform sort of optimized first, or optimized as quickly as possible. We like to use frameworks like the RICE framework, prioritization frameworks, can be really helpful in having, again, removing the subjectivity and having an objective view of the kind of impact that this specific hypothesis might have. And the RICE framework, in terms of like how many people will this reach, what will the impact be, what's the confidence we have, and what's the effort to implement it. There's a few other ones, PI and a few other ones, but we do find that having a prioritization framework as well can really make sure that you are starting with the right thing, and often there's a balance between identifying quick wins that can be potentially quite simple things that can have a big impact, and balance those with those kind of slow burner, more complex optimizations as well. But certainly from our experience, having all of those hypotheses driven by insight, and making sure you're doing the right things first, can help to mitigate any kind of risk when you're embarking upon optimization.
Great. In the interest of time, I'm going to come to both Ashley and Adam specifically for our final question before we move into Q&A. So I guess now, looking at it from the overhaul perspective, what do you think are some of the common pitfalls that businesses make when replatforming? And back to that whole sort of point around kind of mitigating risk, how can I have greater confidence that my transformative project is going to deliver the results I want? It's going to deliver ROI.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I think if you're already testing, right, if you've already got an experimentation program, and you're learning, what's working with your audience, I think that sets you on a really good track for your website overhaul, right? Because you're already thinking, you're in the right mindset, you've got experiments running, you're super aware of what the data's telling you. You might do other research, it might be user testing, it might be, qualitative research with your actual clients. Whoever thought of actually asking your clients what they want, right? So it's, it's about sort of really getting under the skin of doing that. But so I think the pitfall is not doing that. The pitfall is just sort of starting from a standing start and going, we need, thinking that the overhaul is going to be a silver bullet, and thinking that, it's going to be a simple process. It's not. And sort of maybe not considering all of these different these different complexities that we've been talking about. I think they're the pitfalls that you may fall into. And I think that I just say, there are mitigations to all of those. And I think just starting by picking a really good partner, right, who's experienced in doing this and has worked on similar projects with other clients, and really understanding what those case studies are, right? Do they resonate with you? Do they represent your use case? Are you in the same position that someone, to really get under the skin of some of those projects that your potential partners worked on in the past, like we did with Candyspace, and really understand if you know that they're the right partner for you, and if they are, they're going to help you through all of these and mitigate all of these issues. I think there are some that are internal and a lot more sort of better worked through as a business, but there's a lot of things that a good partner can help you really avoid pitfalls that other brands have fallen into.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I typically see this question in two halves, because there's the whole prevention side, so a whole load of strategy you can do around preventing pitfalls. So that's doing proper thorough requirements gathering, having a proper migration strategy, allocating the right resources, putting contingency in there if it is a waterfall project, and really doing that proper governance and planning. So that's kind of all the mitigation around like strategy. The other side is having confidence around the ROI. So having really clear, measurable objectives that are tied to business value, having a nice detailed total cost analysis, total cost of ownership analysis in there, including maintenance costs, having a really good business case, right, with both qual and quant benefits. And actually, I think often with this is getting some quick wins under your belt early is really key, because that actually sets the confidence going forward, and actually often gives Ashley, you talked about the stakeholders and getting buy-in. That's how you win confidence with a group of stakeholders, by demonstrating the value really early, because often, as John says, we do prioritization and rice scoring. Often there's some really low-hanging fruit that we can really kind of focus on very early and get some really quick wins under our belt. So having clear KPIs and monitoring and having that data to back up actually just kind of, I guess, builds confidence around the return on investment. I think that is really key. So I see it in two halves: ROI and sort of the confidence and around ROI, and then the prevention strategies, which is ultimately planning.
Super. I'm very aware we've got about a minute and a half for questions. It's been a really lovely, lively discussion. I know we've had one through that has asked, what are the benefits of choosing a headless CMS versus a traditional CMS? Any quick
that is a really big question, because it isn't right. And I often ask, when people say I want to go headless, the first thing I often say is why, because I don't know if people always understand the benefit of headless. Headless can liberate you to have a decoupled front end, and have a back end that allows you to have modern technology sitting on the front, like React, having a nice scalable modular design system sitting on the front. But with headless comes a kind of composable approach to your architecture, which moves the complexity somewhere else. It doesn't solve complexity. I think this is a sort of slight misnomer. So it is a different way of arranging your technology stack. And often, going down a more traditional platform as a service route might be the right way to go. It's a buzzword that's used a lot. And I guess without understanding the use case, like headless may or may not be right for your businesses. In terms of digital maturity, it's a different buying decision. And a different arrangement in terms of your technology stack that sort of shifts the complexity in a different way, but it doesn't get rid of complexity. It just moves it somewhere else.
I'm going to have to stop you there, Adam. We've got countdown timer. I'm well aware we're very much up to the hour. If you've got any further questions, please feel free to send them over. And thank you to everyone for attending.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for all my panelists. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.